All right, everyone. Thank you for coming on a Friday, right? Last day of the show. Really appreciate everybody joining here. We do have a lot of seats up here, so if anybody wants to come up, we have some great demos later on that might be better if you're a little bit up front a little bit, but up to you. So again, thank you very much for joining this day. We're really going to be here talking about how you and other companies in the world really are protecting your website against identity attacks and frauds. So this is really kind of a session around reCAPTCHA. We're excited to be here. We have several great things to talk about, as well as some of the we have customers that will come up a little bit later to talk a little bit about their journey as well. So super excited about this particular session, and thank you for coming. So by way of introduction, my name is Jian Zhen. I'm the product management lead for reCAPTCHA, and we will also later on have Chris Hamilton, who's our engineering lead, that will come up and talk a little bit about some of the newer capabilities that we have. Today we have three primary topics. First, I will run through a little bit about what reCAPTCHA is for the folks who may not be super familiar with it, or even if you're familiar with some parts of reCAPTCHA, areas that you may not be aware of. So we'll run through that a little bit. Second, we're going to have a great customer come up, talk a little bit about their journey. Huge customer, great brand. We will definitely have a great conversation there. And then lastly, for a third part of this session, we will talk a little bit about some of the newer concepts that we're working on, things that are not yet out, but we have some awesome demo videos that you can take a look at and see what the future might look like. If you're interested in any of those areas, feel free to also come up and talk to us a little bit later as well. Lastly, we'll have a few minutes at the end to run through some of the questions. And if you have questions, we have a couple of folks that will have to be carrying mics. They can hand you the mic, and we can have a great conversation there as well. All right, so that's where we are. Let's talk a little bit about why we care about identity attacks and frauds, right? Why do we want to protect against that? Let's say you have a website. You have a website that has a great set of content that's sitting out in the public. You want people to talk, kind of look at the content. You're potentially providing, let's say, financial advice to customers on how they can build out their financial journey, right? You're potentially also providing a set of services that allows them to get more targeted advice. Maybe they can get specific kind of targeted models on how they can build their financial future. And with that, you're also allowing these customers of yours, right, the users that are visiting your website, to potentially transact or potentially buy additional services, right? That's typically what a website would do. I mean, obviously, there's many variations of websites, like retail, like e-commerce, like banking. These are all examples of websites. But in this particular case, let's talk through what that would look like. Many times when users and when traffic's coming to your site, hitting this particular website, they're looking at the content. There are potentially two threat vectors that you have to think about. One is the bots out there might be scraping the website. They're looking at the content, and they're aggregating the content, and they're using that aggregated content to do whatever they want to do. So you potentially have a lot of bots that's coming to your website. In fact, what we're seeing is that over 30% of the traffic that's coming to public websites are automation tools and bots, right? So that alone right there is wasting your resources and also potentially taking valuable content that you have created and now making it available potentially to other people through their websites, right? So you don't want that. As the user goes through a journey and as they potentially log in or create accounts on these websites, right? You register, the user registers on your website, they create an account, they start logging in. So these actions that you're doing on these websites now have other threat vectors that you have to think about as well, right? Registration, many times websites who have potentially promotional bonuses may see a lot of fake account creation, right? These accounts are created so these attackers can take advantage of the credit, and so they can create a bunch of them and take away your marketing budget, right? Once they start logging in, many of your users potentially have also reused passwords. In fact, we're seeing 65% of the users out there are using reused password or reusing passwords, which introduces another vector for attackers to take over accounts. And once the account is taken over, there are many things that the attackers could do. One is they can use these accounts as mule accounts to transfer potentially money, right? That's one attack. They can also scrape additional detailed information that are behind logins, right? So some of the, in this particular example, right, that we talked about, the fictitious website, they might be providing financial information which requires the users to enter some additional sensitive information. And if the attackers then take over those accounts, they can then scrape those content and also take those content and sell them, right? So that's another vector. Your website might be also using second factor authentication, right? Maybe using SMS, or potentially even using SMS as a primary vector of authentication. When you're doing that, attackers could potentially also cause financial harm on your website by requesting you to send messages to countries that have very high cost of SMS, right? You know, obviously in the United States or North America, you probably don't sense that because text is practically free. But in many other countries, there's a very high cost of SMS. And we also see a lot of attacks that, you know, as you, some of you may know, it's called SMS pumping or SMS toll fraud, where they cause the company to send tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of messages to high cost areas, which then cause financial harm to the company. We have one customer, prior to using any solution to protect that, they were seeing about $100,000 in charge per day of SMS cost, right? So that's a huge attack. Lastly, once you are in the website and you're now doing financial transactions, maybe you're paying with a credit card, there's two additional attack vectors that you have to think about. One is what the industry calls carding. A attacker may have a long list of credit cards, which they can start testing using your website to see if those credit cards are valid. Maybe a small transaction, they see whether that credit card works or not. If it works, then they go do a much bigger transaction, right, thousands of dollars, at which point it could result in what they call chargeback, which now, you know, the actual owner of that credit card may go back to the credit card company and say, hey, I didn't charge that. You can't charge me. I'm not going to pay for that, which then result in the company now have to basically eat that cost, right, resulting in a chargeback. So there's a lot of different attack vectors as a user looks at, you know, goes onto your website and goes through the user journey that they have. So what you need really is a comprehensive platform that really protects all these other threats that we just talked about, right? Website scraping, account takeovers, fake account creation, SMS pumping, carding, chargebacks. These are all attack vectors that you have potentially experienced. And this is really what you need is a bot protection and fraud prevention platform that helps you solve these problems. And this is where we want to talk to you about reCAPTCHA, which is the layer defense platform that allows you to protect against all these threats that we talked about, right? So let's think about how we are protecting all these attacks. Bots that are scraping your website, that are really kind of taking your content and potentially taking the user information, right? reCAPTCHA provides two layers of defense here. One is really just using network signals, super easy to integrate. There's no client-side integration. If you're using the WAF integration that we have for reCAPTCHA, there's no back-end server-side integration. It is just simply, you do the API call. We give you a risk score and telling you whether this particular access to your website is potentially a bot or not a bot. Right? Super simple to use. However, obviously, that's less granular for some of your use cases. So we also have a full-fledged bot protection capability that allows you to insert a JavaScript library on your website. We collect a ton more signals, user behaviors, the browser signals, the network signals, and everything that then give you a much more granular score that you can then decide whether this is a bot or not. Right? So from a bot perspective, we have a full suite solution. Next stage, we talked about login, we talked about SMS pumping, we talked about password leak. We have a full suite of protection, account protection capability here as well that protects you against fake account creation, account takeovers, SMS pumping. And so if that's an area of interest, this is something that you definitely should be looking at. In addition, one of the things that we allow you to do is to also tell us if something is, we missed or not, right? If you are sending us information and say, hey, you know what, that is not correct, you can actually provide feedback and retrain some of the work that we're doing. So this is actually a great set of capabilities that you can leverage. And then finally, the fictitious website that we talked a little bit about earlier, right? You now can start doing transactions. And what we provide is a capability that before you actually make that transaction, you can get a risk score to say, hey, is this a carding attack? Is somebody testing credit cards on my website? And whether this is something that could potentially result in a chargeback, right? If there's a high risk there and you don't want to let that transaction through, then you don't have to worry about the chargeback that could come potentially 90 days later, right? A user or an owner of a credit card can have up to 90 days to come back to the credit card company and come back to you as a website owner to say, hey, that's not my transaction. I don't want to pay for that, right? So with that, reCAPTCHA today is used by over 15 million websites to protect all variations of the attack vectors that we talked about, right? We're collecting over 100 billion events and signals on a monthly basis to train our models to really kind of help you understand whether those access to your websites are risky or not, right? A study that we recently did, we're seeing that for an enterprise, we're seeing about $5 million in annual savings. That includes operational cost reduction, that includes staff improvement, that includes infrastructure, reduce infrastructure costs. And so there's a bunch of things that we looked at and say, you know what, reCAPTCHA is really kind of helping our enterprise customers to achieve the benefit that they have. And obviously, one of the things that we've seen in the field quite a bit is by the reduction of bot traffic, by the reduction of account takeover traffic, your marketing budget and all the things that you potentially spend are also saved as well, right? All that is included in this particular study. If you're interested, we have a QR code at the end of the slides, what you can take, and we can share that with you soon. 3-year ROI, 545%. This is a huge savings, right? I mean, if you're talking to your CISOs, if you're talking to your CIOs about why you need to protect your website, why you need to protect all these threat vectors, this is really a great kind of case study that you can leverage. From a usage perspective, how do we actually make this work? How does reCAPTCHA actually work? At the core of reCAPTCHA is this thing that we call defense agent. What we bring together in this defense agent is all the things that we're on my right, on your left, that we collect signals. We talked about 100 billion signals that we collect on a monthly basis. That's what's used to train our models. On that side of the picture, you'll see that we also not just collecting the signals from the users and the access, but also leveraging many of the Google knowledge that we have collected over the years, whether payments are fraudulent or not, whether certain networks are potentially botnets or not. All these things that we collect from a first-party Google perspective that we can now also leverage to train the models. And that everything comes together in this middle in our defense agent where we continuously learn how this thing works. Right? Today, I'm going to spend just maybe 3 slides talk about some of the newer advancements that we have over the past year. These are really things that they are available today. You can go look at them. You can go look at the documentation. You can also really make sure that we have the reports that are there, right? So one thing, Gemini Power Fraud Reports. This is available today. If you're a reCAPTCHA customer, go to Google Cloud Console. You can go see that right now. If you're not a reCAPTCHA customer today, but you're a GCP customer, you can also enable the API and go see the global fraud report that's already there. It gives you a great trend of where the fraud trend is going from a global perspective. For certain customers, we also have specific trends for that customer as well, for their websites and for all their kind of properties. So a great report to go take a look at. We had a preview of this last year. We launched it in GA, something that you should go take a look at. Second thing, network defense. This is something that I talked a little bit about earlier. In order for you to quickly determine whether you can protect your website, whether we can provide you some protections or not, network defense allows you to quickly integrate with just an API call in the back end. You don't need to worry about client-side integration. If you use our WAF integration, you actually don't even need the backend integration as well because you can turn it on with, for example, if you use Cloud Armor, it's integrated in there already. Right? So this gives you a very simple, easy to use bot defense mechanism to start, and then you can start also integrating some of the other capabilities, more advanced capabilities. And then finally, from an SMS toll fraud perspective, we talked about this a little bit earlier. An attacker can cause the website owner to send out tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of SMS messages. There's two things that they can benefit from, right? One is maybe they just don't like you, and they want to cause you financial harm, right? That's one thing. But more likely than not, they're also colluding with the telco that are sending that SMS message, right? On average, for some of the higher cost countries, on average, we see about 25 cents per SMS cost. And the telco and the attacker potentially will split that cost, right? So there's a financial gain, not just financial impact to you, but it's a financial gain to the attacker as well, right? We launched SMS defense earlier this year in GA. It's available already. We have many large customers using it already, sending us tens of millions of assessments, and it's really kind of helping them. This is the only solution in the market today that allows you to get a risk score before you send a message. Not after you already spent 25 cents sending the message, but before you actually send the message, right? Again, available GA. All three of these things is something that you can go take a look at right now, okay? All right, with that, it's a very quick overview. What I really want to spend the time and save the time to do is bring one of our great customers to come up on stage and talk to us a little bit about how they're protecting their websites and against the identity frauds and whatnot, okay? So with that, I will come Sunil and Ivo from the Coca-Cola company, as well as our engineering leader, Chris, on stage. We'll have a quick conversation here.
Hi, Jian.
Sunil, thank you for coming. Ivo, thank you very much. Chris?
Hey.
All right. Well, Sunil, thank you very much for, and Ivo, thank you very much for joining us. Obviously, I'd love to have you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your environment and the type of challenges and business challenges that you're seeing with your website, obviously, as a great global brand. If anybody who doesn't know Coca-Cola, we should have a talk afterwards. But yes, please, introduce yourself and also tell us a little bit about your challenges.
Sure. Thank you, Jian. I'm Sunil. I lead architecture and engineering of marketing technologies at Coca-Cola. Ivo?
My name is Ivo, and I serve as lead architect for our MarTech organization. I lead the design and evolution of consumer-facing systems, including those which support data attribution, promo and campaign management, proof of purchase validation, and some others.
Thank you. Yeah, so tell us a little bit about kind of your environment. What does that look like? Obviously, it's a global brand, so the scale must be humongous, right? And I'd love to hear a little bit more about the business challenges and challenges that you see in your environment.
Sure. Let me give you a context. Like Coca-Cola operates in more than 200 countries and offers over 200 brands. That's a huge scale. That's 200 markets. So we manage websites for our brands, community initiatives, events, and we execute over 5,000 campaigns every year.
Wow.
So that is the scale what we are looking at.
Is there a corner of the world that you're not in?
There are a few of them, you know that. So for us, the challenges, especially from our experiences, especially from fraud and abuse, is two phases. One, which impacts our campaign effectiveness, because that is very, very key for us. And two, disruption of the frictionless consumer onboarding. The journey is what we do. Because if a consumer wants to log in and if you have too much fraud, it impacts that. Those are the two things. On top of it, every experience is what we create. It's unique to the market requirements as well as the market legal requirements. That means that we have a unique journeys across all the markets. That means the way we onboard a customer or a consumer, we authenticate them, and the enrich of the consumers is unique to each markets of it. So that is a challenge what we have. And we also, when it comes to fraud, as well as the abuse of it. We look into three things: the volume. The first, we'll go with the variety. What the fraud in one market is not the same in the other one. That's a variety. If you look at it, the combinations of what we have. Two, the volume and the velocity of they come in. Yeah. Whether it is a bot or a fraud, we need to handle that. And sometimes we need to handle it in real time, and we don't have much space because most of our campaigns run like maybe weeks to months, a couple of them, and some are always on campaigns too. We call it as an experiences. So our challenge here is how do we strike the balance between the way we do it, because robust fraud protection plus without it disrupting seamless or frictionless the consumer journey is the key for us, critical to have a consumer a well delivered and engaging experiences.
Makes sense, makes sense. Any questions?
Yeah, I'd love it if you guys could share a little bit, like what are the main attack vectors, the types of threats that you're seeing on your properties?
I'm smiling because Jian covered everything. You name it, we have it. I don't want to repeat everything. Like, we talked about bot-driven promo fraud, which is there. Account takeovers, fake accounts.
Yeah.
The automation scripting, we have that. Second one is geolocation spoofing, where some of the users that were not intended for those regions, they want to try to involve in the promotions too. That is there too. Another trend, what we are looking at, the SMS fraud, that is big one, because there is a financial gain for the fraudster, what we can do. The challenge here is, it's not only the financial, we are missing out the genuine consumers too. And thanks to a lot of broad protection, within a day or something, there is no traffic because there is so much fraud. We are not able to see between the fraudsters and the genuine customer.
Right.
That is a huge impact for us.
Yeah.
And also we have the loyalty and the promo redemption, the point redemptions, the duplications of redemption. Like, people try to redeem the same code over and over again, the duplications of it. That is there too. And if it is a bot, sometimes it ends up like DDoS attack on us, which is not, where someone is trying to do that. So that is those are the things what we, most probably day to day we face it.
Wow, that's, anytime when there's monetary value, there's somebody trying to abuse it and look at that. One thing that you actually mentioned is super interesting for me is the geolocation spoofing. Obviously people are trying to take advantage of the promotions that you're running. We do see that in a lot of our other customers as well. Some of the customers that, for example, streaming services, right? So they price differently in some of the other locations, maybe much cheaper than the United States. So they see a lot of that type of abuse as well. So we do see that. So thank you for that. So I'm curious, so how are you defending against all these things? Obviously you're a great user of reCAPTCHA. Can you tell us a little bit more how you're defending and what results are you seeing with the use of reCAPTCHA?
Absolutely. Essentially, for all our consumer products, we have implemented defense in depth model to ensure that we have robust protection against fraud and also other cyber attacks. Essentially, the closest analogy that I can give you, imagine a medieval castle. You have the moat and the drawbridge. Those are the network and firewall segmentation. Then you have the guards at the gate. Those are the authentication and authorization. Then you have the inner walls, you have the watchtowers, you have the keep. So you see how all of these form different layers, and each requirement to move to the next layer is stricter than the previous one. reCAPTCHA Enterprise plays key role in our setup. Basically, all our sign-up and sign-in journeys are protected. We make a lot of dynamic assessments there. We use the SML's toll fraud protection in order for us to protect ourselves from our bills to be inflated. We use, for sure, fake account creation prevention. And on top of that, we also monitor for suspicious activity of some of our existing consumers. Essentially, all these insights that reCAPTCHA Enterprise gave us, they enabled us to use more advanced tactics like honeypot and honey nets when we are combating fraud. And when we are in the consumer space, we have to solve really interesting challenges. From one side, you really want the legitimate traffic to have the best possible journey, smooth and frictionless. And on the other side, all fraudulent users, you want to create as much friction as you can and essentially block them at the end. So in the past, we have tried various different products, some analog products, but essentially, neither combination of those worked as well as our integration with reCAPTCHA. Some of those were too conservative. Some of those didn't provide a dynamic defense that we were needing in addition to what we already had in place. And essentially, I just want to say, like, what are the top 3 success factors for us? Number one, our user journeys are multi-step journeys. At different steps and at different moments in time, we collect various consumer information. And when we tested it, essentially, if you determine which is the right step when you want to create the assessment and you provide the proper context, the underlying models are extremely accurate. So this is something that we really enjoyed, just because we were very easy to take a decision like, should we block this attempt? Should we allow it, or should we further challenge it to understand more about the type of threat that it might pose? On the other side, reCAPTCHA is more like a complete product, like suite for us, because we didn't have to onboard multiple products, one to go and give us phone number reputation, other to protect us against suspicious activity. Once we onboarded the solution, we have that out of the box. And again, for the more advanced modules, if you use them, we see great improvement in our results and the consumer journeys overall. And the third one I really like is because we had a lot of measures that were developed before that. Think of it, rate limiting, blacklists, and so on and so forth. reCAPTCHA didn't fight with them, but it became part of the whole solution in a very, very natural way. So essentially, there is no product to replace everything that you have, but essentially, it combines and provides all the synergetic benefits that you will see from that.
That's great. Yeah, thank you for kind of walking through your journey and how you're integrating reCAPTCHA. One thing that kind of really kind of caught my attention as you were talking about it is, one, for the legitimate users on a legitimate device, you want to make sure this experience is as smooth as possible. You don't want to provide any type of friction. But for users that potentially could be risky, you want to be able to have the ability to challenge them. You want the ability to really kind of provide some level of friction to make sure that they're legitimate users, right? So that's a really kind of great concept to kind of think about for many of our customers as well. Yeah.
Great. You shared a lot about how you're currently using us, how we're helping you out, how you're helping your customer journeys. Are there new emerging threats on the horizon, new things that you're worrying about, and how are you preparing for those?
Yeah, I think as technology is enabling, right? Now everything is becoming like bots. Now AI-powered bots. We need to handle that. That's a challenge. Yeah. The same thing. There are many like fraud networks. They offer tools to exploit the promotions. That we need to make sure that's. And also, this geolocation spoofing. They're also becoming very smarter. So we are looking at all the things, everything as a technology, but they're catching up too. So we need to make sure that we are trying to build an application like a exhaustive fraud platform, which will handle all of them. Plus, I want to make sure that here is, as we know that one product cannot solve, but we might have one core product which can cover like 60–70% of it. And we also need to bring in more of them. And we also make sure that we have to make a real-time adjustment too. As I said, our campaigns may run for a week or 2 weeks or a month. We don't have much time there. That means that the way we are approaching here is we are building a robust platform, a layered defense, and also which is policy-driven, configurable, and dynamically managed. And with that, we can adapt and plug and play various factors as we need. And also, with a different level of layers, for example, our productions can have is identity validations. We can look at the behavioral analytics, what he spoke about. We wanted to make sure that dynamic risk scoring, all these things is there so that we can dynamically apply based on the market needs, and we can immediately protect our experiences from the fraud.
That's awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming up to share your experience with us and with our audience. This has been a great conversation. Really appreciate that, and we continue to look forward, obviously, continue working with you closely on protecting, a global brand such as yours.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ivo.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ivo.
All right. So we have a great show coming up with Chris.
He's overselling it, but hopefully this is the exciting part. We're going to show a little bit of our roadmap, some of the upcoming features. Sorry, too close to mic there. All right, let's move on. So yeah, exciting early concepts. These, they're a little bit rough. They're not going to be exactly what the features look like, but you'll get a good feeling for some of the things that we're working on. So first, AI-powered defense agent. Jen had talked about our Gemini-generated fraud report. We also have another feature that we didn't talk about called anomaly detection. And this is where we're analyzing your traffic and identifying ongoing threats and actual attacks. So we want to be able to support some analyst workflows there, right? You are actually kind of the analyst at your company. You're sitting there, you're watching the abuse happen. You want to be able to actually respond to it, learn from it, adapt. So we have tools that allow you to do a deep dive into threats. You'll see here's an attack of this type from this actor. Let me dig into that, take some action. Okay, and we can give a little bit of a demo of what that can look like. We're going to have a bit of a preview here of some things that aren't ready yet. We're going to be talking about policy engines. Obviously, in the end, we're going to want to be able to use these technologies to allow you to kind of change your policy and react dynamically. One of the things that we do have, a tool that's already ready, is what we call annotations, this annotations API. And this is where you can come back and correct us. We're not perfect. We're going to have some false negatives, some false positives. And if you can let us know when we're wrong, that actually helps us protect you better in the future. We go back and we refine our ML models. So right now, this demo is showing, diving deep into an attack. So we can launch an investigation into an ongoing attack that was discovered. You can see a little bit of a breakdown of the timeline, the severity of the threat. You can dig down into individual malicious assessments or actions that we've identified. And then kind of at the bottom here, we have this thing where you can say, here are the labels that we have some low confidence about. The ones that we're very low confidence, that's where there's the most bang for your buck, where you can give us some additional insight. Now, what we're giving you here is just our view of the event. Ideally, an analyst is using that assessment ID, which is going to be tied to their logs, and they're going to have some additional insight into how that event was played out. And they go, oh, you know what? You got that one wrong. That was actually a legit user, or you got that one wrong. That was actually a bot. You can correct us. We can get better. As we move forward, we'll be able to make policy suggestions there. You'll be able to kind of implement policy changes and deploy those live as well. I mentioned policy, so we can give a little bit of a preview of what that's going to look like. This is kind of a 2-for-1 demo. So we already have our established challenge, like the V2 visual challenge. Recaptcha grew up in a time and with a very different product audience. We were largely trying to help the long tail of the internet deal with comment spam. That was the origin. And it was meant to be a turnkey solution. You didn't have to think about it, set and forget, walk away. As we've moved into the enterprise space, obviously it's much more demanding users. People want to be able to kind of customize the flow, really fine-tune their journey. So we're exposing policy controls for you to fine-tune when a challenge kicks in. And we're also building new challenge types, kind of a menu of challenges along this curve of kind of maybe more invasive or higher friction and lower friction. And you can really fine-tune the amount of friction you want to offer users and when it happens. So we can show a little bit of a demonstration of setting that policy. So this would be at key creation type. And very simple, oh yes, I want to be able to set a policy for when this score, or for when the challenge is shown based on the score. I can change the different types of challenges from visual, QR code, hand gesture, go and change the actions that are taken depending on the parameters of the assessment. That showed very, very simple, which was based off of score. But as we move on, we'll be exposing basically everything that's available in an assessment, right? So you should be able to write kind of full programming language-based assessment. And then here's a new challenge type. Sorry, I forgot we had music for this. Thank you for turning it on. So new challenge type, hand gestures. Just a little bit further up the difficulty and maybe invasiveness scale. And we have some customers that are excited about that because that's exactly what they're looking for. Might not be for everybody, but that's why I want to give people a menu of options across the spectrum. Okay, another challenge type, what we call MODAC internally, mobile device anti-abuse challenge. Maybe we want a better name for this, but this is basically a cross-device flow. Okay, on the web, we don't have, well, you might have a TPM on your desktop device, but you don't have access to it via the web platform, so we don't really have very strong rate-limiting primitives. Mobile devices have that. So when we have a suspicious session on the web, we don't have an effective mechanism because visual challenges can be pretty easily broken by expensive AI agents or like LLM technologies. we don't have a very solid rate limiting mechanism. So if we can tie a session on the web to a session on a mobile device where we do have those primitives, that gives us a very effective rate limiting mechanism. The visual challenges still have their place because they're a roadblock and they're a speed bump and they cause additional cost, but sometimes it's not enough friction. It's not enough to stop the attacker. So you can move to something like this, where we force this cross-device flow, and we have a very strong rate limiting primitive because of the mobile device and the secure enclave, which is persisted across hardware like factory resets, et cetera. And here's a demo of this. So this will look familiar to people. People are already very familiar with QR codes. You run into this, say, WhatsApp when you want to delegate authority to another device. WhatsApp on desktop. You scan the QR code. We're going and checking a rate limiting counter on the secure enclave. While we're doing this, we can also be picking up other things. We could be asking for biometrics, get a fingerprint. We could take people down an identity flow. There's a whole menu of other options that we could be building on top of this basic primitive, but it's a pretty strong primitive to build anti-abuse off of. Next slide. And then we have an integration into Google Analytics coming up. And this actually came from customers telling us about how they're using reCAPTCHA and Google Analytics, and then looking for ways to make that kind of more native and more tightly integrated. So the common use case here is people have they'll have some type of advertising campaign and they're observing it with analytics, and they're looking to optimize kind of conversion rates. They want to get customers in the door, and they're using reCAPTCHA to kind of augment, the traffic that's coming in to whatever the conversion event is, to be able to filter out, the noise from the signal. And then with a detailed integration, that means we have direct integration to all of the dashboards, kind of single-click activation path. You don't actually have to go and create a project and provision a site key and set up your policy and all that. Just out of the box works with Google Analytics. And then some other upcoming things that team has, PMax, which is a product for kind of automated the optimization of your whole advertising campaign right through to the conversion funnel. It gives them an objective function for that last step in the funnel, so they can really automate that. And there's some trials that we did with some customers where they saw some really, really good success. I don't know the exact numbers of the conversion rate, but they were very excited. So we can give a quick demo here.
In today's digital landscape, distinguishing real users from bots.
Same thing, we have audio here if we can turn that up.
Risk score is now available in Google Analytics as custom dimensions. You can identify and segment traffic in real time. Track time-based trends, uncover geographic hotspots for risky behavior, and quantify the true impact of bad actors on your site. We also allow you to filter your data by specific reCAPTCHA score thresholds to build a clear, accurate view of valid traffic free from noise. And by integrating reCAPTCHA with Google Analytics, you gain a powerful lens into real user behavior, driving smarter marketing, better decisions, and clean, reliable data.
Yeah, thanks. So that features in a private preview phase where we've onboarded a small group of customers. We're exploring that out, but look forward to that coming into a public preview if anybody's interested. It should be coming relatively soon in the next quarter or two. All of these things should be before the end of the year. No firm timelines yet, but all of these are being worked on actively. And if folks have questions, yeah, thank you.